diagnosis can make a lifetime of difference. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
When Dad needed help getting around, I became his driver. Any daughter would do the same. But soon enough, he needed help doing more things, and it was up to me to be his personal shopper and financial manager too. And before I knew it, Dad moved in with me. So I became his cook, his personal assistant, his physical therapist, and even his nurse. When I started taking care of Dad, I didn't realize all the roles I'd have to play. But no matter what, I know I'm still his daughter.
We understand the many roles you play, and to help, we created an online caregiving resource center. At aarp.org/caregiving, you can find resources and connect with the caregiving community. Together, we can better care for ourselves and the ones we love. Visit aarp.org/caregiving to learn more. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
The following Black History
I'm still.
KBLKradio.com.
The Oblate Sisters of Providence are the oldest order of black nuns in the world.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm sorry, I had it on mute.
In 1829, by Reverend Father Hector Shea and Mother Mary Elizabeth Lang, the order still exists today and continues Mother Mary's dedication of service to children and the poor. Not much is known about Lang's early life. Historians have produced several conflicting documents. What most researchers agree on is she was born around 1784 in Santiago de Cuba and raised in the French-speaking region of the nation. Lang was also connected to a family of means and social standing. After arriving in Baltimore in 1813, Lang encountered other Caribbean people and realized they should be educated. Though Maryland was then a slave state, Lang began teaching people for free, using her own money and the home she shared with Mary Frances Wallace in Fells Point. In 1828, Father Hubert came to Lang with the idea of beginning a school for black girls. This led Lang to pledge her life to the Catholic Church. In July 1829, Lang, Sister Ballas, and two other women formed the Oblate Sisters Order. In 1831, the order was officially recognized by the larger church body.
America's finest city, America's finest music and talk from the Black perspective. KBLK, K-Black, San Diego.
Good afternoon. My name is Renee Davis. I am the co-host of the Black Wall Street's True American Story, and our host name is Judith Robinson, and she's sitting next to me, and we're so glad you came to share our afternoon with us. Today, I would like to just kind of share Judith. This is a small prayer for her. She lost her brother, we just found out, and so we just want to give her some strength and uplift that we get through this program. She's such a dynamic woman, and I just love her just to come and just continue to be with us today. And I wanted to let her know that we love you and thank you for being here with us today.
For many of you that would like to dial in today, you can dial in to ask questions, because of course we are going to have a guest that we had last week, Mr. Mfalme Neter Djeli. He'll be coming on after a commercial break. And if you'd like to call in for questions or input, you can dial 619-356-4702 or 619-356-4709, and we'll look forward to hearing from you today. We just want to go over briefly and just share how was your week this week, Renee?
We had a good week, Judith. Thank you for asking.
Well, this week I tell you what, I went through a little something, let's just say life, you know, we are living our lives, and today I want to dedicate this show to my brother John Willingham. John Willingham was my brother, and we come from a family of, there were 5 of us. My brother, one thing about him, he was a kind of lived against the system and lived off of the grid. So he chose to live in his car, and he did this for some years now, okay? And he was successful with doing it. But as he grew older in age, you know, we would meet up, he would come to family events, but he started going through some health challenges. How many of you know if you're sleeping sitting up and your body's not able to really truly relax, that's not the best thing for your circulation. So he started encountering some health issues, and anyway, you know, sometimes you just never know. You just feel like you're not doing enough for your loved ones. But he chose to live this way. So I kept working with him. I said, well, you know, you need to start looking at some other alternatives, because living in your car like this is not the best for your health. And so the last I spoke to him was it was on the 3rd of October. And he mentioned that, you know, he wasn't feeling good, but, you know, he knew that he needed to pay his phone bill. I said, yes, please go pay your phone bill, because in an event of emergency, we need to be able to reach you. And he kind of went off the grid. From that day, was not able to get a hold of him, and so I went out to some of the areas that he frequently hangs out at, out toward the beach area and out toward Midway here in San Diego, and could not find my brother. The other day, it was early in the morning, like 5 a.m. I woke up and just sat on the side of my bed. I was just woke straight up out of my sleep, and I just was sensing something in my spirit. And anyway, so we got on the phone. The next day, we started calling hospitals. I drove out there again Friday, and so yesterday I got the news. And you know, by the way, there was a show on earlier that was speaking about the social media. You know, how we're so in tune to that, and we're always on there. Well, he talked about the good and he talked about the bad. Well, I just want to share today a portion of it that was good, because that's how I was informed that my brother passed. So I have another brother that lives in Georgia, and his lady friend contacted me. And how she contacted me was she messaged me through Facebook. And she said, please give me a call. I have some information about your brother. It's not good. And I knew then. So today I want to dedicate today's show to my brother John. He always loved to be involved with engineering and technology, but he never totally pursued it. So when I shared with him I was hosting a show, he was very excited and he was glad about it. He says, oh, you're going to be like that show host in LA, Dominique DePrima. I said, okay. I checked her out, and she's up and thriving, and she has a lot of celebrities come on her show. But today I want to reiterate and just share the name of our show is The True American Story, Black Wall Street. And for some weeks now, we've been reiterating about the story in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in the early 1900s, and how they had a thriving, bustling, they first called it Little Africa, and then it was renamed Black Wall Street. And why it was named that is because there was a township of black people that had businesses. It was 36 blocks long. It was over 600 businesses, and they thrived and created wealth. And it took several hours before that money recycled out of their neighborhood and went out globally. And this is what we're carrying on, that spirit that they had today, practicing group economics and learning to pool our money, learning to galvanize and understand that we've been indoctrinated for years now. Go to school, go to college, get your degree, get a good job. And then you end up working for someone that you don't even know, that may even practice racism, and they'll look at you and say, well, you're either not qualified or you're disqualified. So I want to share a quick story about truth and lie, because we have been so indoctrinated to believe a well-dressed lie. So I want to share a quick story about truth and lie. I'm a true believer that truth and lie cannot live together. So one day, truth and lie, they were walking together down the street. And as they walked together down the street together, they walked by a beautiful lake. And when they saw that lake, they decided, let's stop and go take a swim. So truth takes off all his clothes, lie takes off all his clothes. They get in the lake, they start swimming, they start backstroking, they have a lot of fun. Then finally, lie hops out of the water and he starts putting on truth's clothes. And he takes off running. So truth, he hops out the water, he takes off running after lie. And he said, hey, give me my clothes, give me my clothes. So what we have here is a well-dressed lie being chased by the naked truth. Okay? And that's what we've really kind of practiced and been indoctrinated in all these years over here in America. We've been in the habit of chasing down a well-dressed lie, Renee. Okay? And how many of you have ever had someone lie on you? And you took your time chasing down that lie, trying to say, oh, I didn't do that. You're trying to tell your story. And then you got all the deliberators, and then you got all the naysayers, and then you got, you know, I used to call it when I raised my children and something went on and I could tell one of them wasn't telling the truth. I said, okay, we about to have what is called kangaroo court. And in that kangaroo court, once we got through deliberating, somebody's going to tell. And someone ends up telling. Okay? And once they told, then we had to come up with a remedy. What do you think the punishment should be for that person? You know? And I thought that was fair because you got to get people thinking. You got to get people thinking, okay, we're over here. Let's kind of shift. We're over here in America. We've got election season coming. We got two candidates that bicker and argue and put one another down. And it makes you pretty restless. You're kind of afraid, well, should I not vote, even vote? Because I don't like either one of them. Or maybe I might do Hillary, but, you know, we might get more of the same. We're going to get more of the same thing. All right, but here we go with the idea of if you had to leave, if something were to come down over here in America where you had to leave American soil, where would you go? Okay? I'd like to get my audience thinking, where would you go? What would you do? Do you have a plan B? Because our guest that's going to come on after a commercial break, he's going to share a plan. And I'm going to call this segment 2 because he was our guest last week, and it's called Nation Building and Economic Development. His name is Mfalme Neter Djeli. So we'll see you after the commercial break. Keep listening in. We'll look forward to hearing from some of you. As I mentioned again, please feel free to call in 619-356-4704 or 356-4702. You're listening to KBLKradio.com.
When I was little, I didn't talk for a long time. I liked things to always be the same. Anything new or different would scare and upset me. I was very sensitive to lights and sounds. It was almost like I had bigger eyes and ears than everyone else. So I built secret hiding places where nothing could get in. I didn't like looking people in the eye. It made me feel uncomfortable. I'd throw big tantrums over little things like when my socks didn't match. Sometimes I'd do the same things over and over.
Yes, sir.
Until one day, I found out I had autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I learned how to live with it better.
You can see signs of autism in children as young as 18 months. Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org/signs. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
A boy born in Joplin, Missouri was fascinated by anything with wheels and a motor. The odds of him going on to fascinate millions with his talent? 1 in 260,000. The odds of this born racer having 157 career top 10 finishes in NASCAR? 1 in 125 billion. But every driver seeks the pinnacle of their achievements. The odds of him winning both the Daytona 500 and the Brickyard 400 in the same year? 1 in 195 million. The odds of the child being diagnosed with autism? 1 in 68. I'm NASCAR driver Jamie McMurray, and my niece has autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs. Early diagnosis can make a lifetime of difference. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
San Diego's news source for R&B, KBLK.
Good afternoon. You're listening to KBLKradio.com. I'm Judith, your host, and my co-host, Renee Davis. Thanks for tuning in today. You're in for a treat. We have our second segment of Nation Building with Mr. Mfalme Neter Djeli. Mfalme, are you there? Welcome to the show again. Thank you for coming back a second time. We just want to. You are so welcome. We have a title called Nation Building, Economic Development. And when you think of nation building, what do you think of? Or have you already been involved with nation building? Well, today he's going to share a plan that he has come up with for nation building and how you can participate in it. Mfalme, please, again, welcome. Share a little bit about your personal professional background.
I started out in business as sales and doing general marketing, and then around 2000 into 2008, I became a professional business consultant, specializing in economic development and small business startups. Probably helped start over maybe 567 something businesses. And in that process, I got into the process of what people would call becoming conscious or waking up or becoming awoke. And then I started looking at the social and the economic status and the oppression of our people and how we got there. And not being one that just looks at things, I had to fix it. I had to come up with a plan. If nobody else was going to do it, I had to do it. And they say change starts with you. So.
Yes. Yes. So, you reside in Alabama, and tell us what inspired you to get involved with the nation building and economic development.
I'm actually Jamaican, so from a very young age, one of the few Jamaican national heroes that they teach you about is Marcus Garvey.
Yes.
And in learning about Marcus Garvey, the funny thing I tell everybody is sometimes when you're a child, you'll learn something, and as an adult, you think you're having an original idea. And, thinking that I was the first one to ever think of this, because I wasn't real aware and being conscious, or as my wife says, I just got conscious yesterday. I'm like, nobody built a nation. And then I looked at all the different nations that we had. She was like, did you know how many black successful societies we had at the turn and the end of slavery and before segregation? And then she started talking about Black Wall Street, and then she started talking about Roswell, and she was talking about Detroit and Chicago. Most people don't know that those were all prominently black started cities. That's where the slaves went when they freed them, and that's how those cities started. And then Tulsa, Black Wall Street, and then a lot of people don't know 1 in every 3 cowboys was actually black. So the Wild Wild West was called that because that's where all the black Confederate soldiers and free soldiers that fought in the war went to. They went to the West. They actually built the West. And then have a lot of misconceptions of what we think is an original thought, myself included. And then I just started looking at the development of all these different cities and towns and startup shifts and nation building plans. And I just looked at why they weren't successful and how they failed and how I could improve on my supposed original idea. And then I just didn't reinvent the wheel. I just added on to it, and instead of making a new wheel, I just made a different tire. And that's really what changes progression. You don't have to spend time making a new wheel if there's already a wheel. You just maybe invent a better tire that doesn't get flat or that has a different tread that can go through snow.
Yes.
You'll get a lot further, a lot farther doing that.
Yes.
As Reverend Carter says, you got to stay in your own lane.
Exactly. Yes, that's one of his favorite sayings. I want to just reiterate right quick. You mentioned as your wife brought up to you about Black Wall Street. I want to do a quick summary of History's Lost Black Towns, because this type of history is, again, not in our schools or colleges, and for our nation of people, it's important for us to know. So besides Black Wall Street, yes, there were North Carolina, it was called Durham, North Carolina. It was considered a Black Wall Street. It had a township. In 1950, Rosewood, okay? And in 1970, St. Augustine, Florida, Fort Mose, okay? 1982, Seneca Village, Manhattan, New York. Okay, these were all townships of us black people. They weren't immigrants then, okay, that were in our country, and where you have this multicultural races like we do today. Again, there was 5 Points, Lower Manhattan, New York, Wicksville, Brooklyn, New York, which was a refuge for freed slaves and southern and northern black people. There's also here in California, Colonel Allensworth. There's a town called Allensworth, which now it's pretty much a historical place where you can go, like a museum, and you can read up on these places, as I mentioned. And also there were freedmen's and town in Houston.
Wow.
Okay.
That's where I'm from, Houston.
Okay.
That's amazing. I didn't know that.
And so this is why it's so important to put that information out there, and then you all begin to do your own research. So how that ties in, that those era of time that those cities had were booming, and we were always industrious. We always created and built and developed and invented things. How does that tie in today with the plan that you have, Mfalme?
Well, the thing that most readily ties into it is the plan itself is not a Back to Africa plan. A lot of people get that confused. It's really not. When you want to go to Africa, you want to go to an island in the middle of the ocean, I don't care where we go. The point is, we as a people need one place that is not affected by three things. And they're the most three important and those three basic things in the world. We just don't think of it that way. We need to not be taxed for how we develop our food,
yes,
how we collect our water, and how we make our shelter. See, because if you can control how somebody makes their food or tax them for their food, that's how the Queen created the problem with America. She just taxed them for the food that they were sending over, because we never grew the food here originally. We all got it shipped over, and we had to buy a certain amount of goods. And that's where taxation without representation and the Tea Party came from, because they forced us to buy peace. So once you realize that as a black community, well, who produces our food? They do. Who controls the tax on what we pay for the food that they control? They do. Who even gives us our own food? They do. So if they shut down a Walmart or a food center in your local area, or a perfect example, they stop sending you fresh food and start giving you GMO food, well, then three things happen. Cancer starts growing at a 90% rate per year. Diabetes increases by 77% per your entire population, because everything they're giving you has sugar or fat in it. And then the second thing, or the third thing rather, is your general health is just poor because you're not eating real food. You're eating fake food created in a lab. So now, what is the importance of having free water that doesn't get taxed? Well, water falls from the sky. If you collect it, you don't even have to pay for it. It literally falls from the sky every day.
Yes.
So if you don't have to pay somebody to collect something that is a basic natural resource, all the money that you're spending on the food and the water literally can go to something else. You see? So now the last thing and the most important thing, and this is the single greatest thing about why I created this plan, is if you have to pay a man to create your shelter, and even if you build it with your own hands, you have to pay him. So let's say me and you, or me and your son, or me and anybody you know that's capable enough goes out to a forest, right? And I hand him a dollar saw from the 99-cent store, and I say, that's good enough to cut a tree down. And then I say, let's go cut 310 trees that are 1 foot wide and that are 10 feet long. Now, the reason why that number is important is because to make a log cabin, you only need 310-foot trees that are a foot thick. And all you have to do is stack them like Legos and nail them together. You don't have to be a builder. You don't have to have a construction license. They do it on the Native Reservation every day. 310 trees could make you a house. Well, let's say you didn't even buy the trees. Let's just say out of 360 years a day, once a day after you got off of work, you and that buddy went and cut down 1 tree. That means in a year you would have enough trees somewhere that you could build a house with. It didn't cost you anything. It cost you $1 to buy the saw and the labor to move the tree. Well, even if you did that in America, well, you have to do 3 things. You have to submit a building permit, which is taxed. You have to get a building license, which is taxed. And then you have to complete a blueprint for what you're going to build, which is also taxed. Then you have to, even if you buy the land, you have to pay a separate tax to build on that land. So now you're paying 4 taxes, and you collected all the materials to build yourself a decent sized 4-bedroom home that would look like a wood cabin that they sell in LA for $5 million in Big Bear. But you had to pay so much in taxes for the free trees that you cut down that you can't even afford to build your own log cabin anymore. So if they can control how they tax how you live, you're not free. You can't say that you can give every man, woman, or child shelter or a home, or take them out the impoverished ghetto and give them a better standard of living because you can't control your food, your water, or your shelter. So
that is a good point.
Right, and I mean, here's a good example. If you win a car or a house, like let's say you were homeless and you just won a house in a lotto, you have to pay the taxes on it. So if I'm homeless and you give me a $100,000 house, I win it in a contest. I have to pay the taxes on the house. I'm homeless. I don't have any money. How do I afford the taxes? Well, if the community doesn't pay that, you're never going to get the house you want. That's crazy, right? You go on the Wheel of Fortune and win a car, you have to pay the taxes on the car you won. So if you can't afford to pay the taxes on that $20,000 or $50,000 Lexus that you want, you can't collect the car. They control how you live your life, and when you change that dynamic, and I'll make a good example. Another black town that everybody forgets is black is Los Angeles. South Central Los Angeles was called South Central because, and I'm from South Central Los Angeles, it's called South Central Los Angeles because there used to be a black law that said black people couldn't be out after slavery or right around that time after the streetlights came on, which is where everybody got that term from, boy, you better be home before streetlights come on. It actually used to be a black code that said black people couldn't be out in neighborhoods past when the streetlights were on. Well, in LA, what they did was they said if you're black, you couldn't be past South Central. So that's why South Central became South Central, because black people couldn't cross the street Central and they had to stay south of it. So that entire community in South Central was always black and still today is prominently black because it was the building and labor force for the First World War Army. So we built all their planes, their tanks, all their manufacturing stuff. Like some of the plants were in Compton, some of the plants were in Long Beach, but we built all those things for the war and it gave us jobs. Now, being warmongers, we made a lot of money. We moved from the jobs in Detroit, and we moved from the South, and we came to Los Angeles. And that's why if you go further enough back, everybody's family in Los Angeles, they're all from somewhere in the South. My family was from North Carolina, and another part of my family was from Connecticut.
Wow,
Your great-great-grandfather, I
that is
guarantee, is from somewhere in the South. And he came right around the time the World War happened, and he got a job. He bought a house or an apartment, and they lived well. What happens then, once they start gentrifying your neighborhood, is they create conditions by taking away things that you need. If I take away your $120,000 a year job, and then I say there's no job, and you're not qualified for any job but this job, so you can only work at places like McDonald's or the corner store, well, if that person doesn't take that equitable skill and create a business around it, he will die. He will literally die because he won't have money to sustain his certain standard of living. Well, if you take a job away from somebody that's making so much money, but you keep taxing them for their standard of living, their food, their water, and their shelter, what happens? He doesn't have any money. It's not like rocket science. He's going to lose his food, his water, and his shelter. Then he becomes homeless, and then he becomes in a ghetto, and then he can't maintain the standard of his house. He can't paint. He can do yard work, but he can't do improvements on that home. So when the roof starts to leak, he can't go pay to fix it. Oh, well, look what happens now in 10 or 20 years. Now it's a ghetto. But 20 years ago, it was the most prominent black community in the world. Everybody in the entire United States wanted to come to LA and live in these black neighborhoods because guess what? Something that we really don't have in Los Angeles on par with where we have it in the rest of the world, there's really not this thing of racism in Los Angeles. Like, I have literally been with white people, and if somebody says something racist, you might get hit by a white person faster than you get hit by a black person because they have so many black friends and they're going to defend you. But what you do have more so than everywhere else other than in New York, in Los Angeles, is classism. Somebody will ask you, where do you work or what kind of car do you drive before they care if you're white or black. Now, what separates racism from classism, and this is very simple, is if we're both equal. So if you're white and have the same job as me, or you're white and have the same money as me, you no longer have the power to be a classist. So the only thing left for you to be is a racist. So if you don't want to like me, the easiest thing for you to do is to be racist. Now, in California, a white person that works at McDonald's can't really be racist to Dr. Dre because he can buy his house. And they know that. He can get him fired from his job. So that gives Dr. Dre a certain power of economic status to not have to be affected so much so by racism. Now, he can be affected by the police, which is cop racism, and they have a power that he doesn't have because they have a bad gun. But if he lived in a neighborhood that was built by his people, for his people, and then policed by his people, he's never going to have to fear cop racism. He's going to be like, well, that cop that works for you guys is my cousin or my nephew, or he's somebody I went to high school with. He's not going to fear that cop. And if he can have a business that he creates to employ that cop or help pay taxes to get that cop that job, then the next thing you have to realize is, how does gentrification work in our neighborhood?
Yes.
If they tell you your ghetto is a ghetto, right?
Yes.
And you start believing it's a ghetto, you take no pride in it. So you don't pick up the trash. You don't paint the houses. I remember when my grandfather was alive, he was a very well-off man. He was actually one of the first black men to ever get a contract for the United States government in Los Angeles, and he was the first black trucking company to actually transport for the Los Angeles post office. And he made a contract where he made a lot of money, but we would go out all the time and help people. And if he saw somebody's house not being painted or if their yard wasn't done, he would say, boy, come on. And we would just go out and do the work. We wouldn't ask him for nothing. We wouldn't even knock on their door. We would just start doing the yard. That way, if we didn't ask, they couldn't say no. They couldn't say yes either, but he didn't care. And then he would show up with paint, and he would paint their house, or he'd make me go do some work and some labor. So I have a different work ethic than most people, but I saw how that little yard work and a little bit of paint can change an entire neighborhood. If we all went to Compton right now and just said, hey, look, we're just going to pick up the trash, cut everybody's yard, and we're going to donate enough money to buy paint. That's it. We're not going to do any home improvement. We're going to sand them and paint the houses. If we painted every house in Compton and cut every yard, the white people would move in a month or a week and start trying to kick black people out because they actually own those houses and we just rent them, or vice versa. And they would say, well, now this is such a beautiful neighborhood. It looks so different. It looks so dynamic. And that's what gentrification is. But all they do is they wait until you're tired of living in a house that's not painted or with the weeds, the graffiti, and the trash. And then then they start kicking you out and say, well, leave. And now when you move somewhere that has less value and property damage, they go in and buy your house for 10 or 5 cents on the dollar. And then you know what they do? They go to Home Depot, they buy a lawnmower, they get some paint, they paint it, and now they say, you know, now this house, and now that it's different, it's worth millions of dollars now. Well, what made it worth millions of dollars was they kicked your black butt out the neighborhood. They just went and painted it and kicked you out.
Well, I'd
So
like to remind,
things,
right quick, Mfalme, I'd like to remind and put in a reminder to call in for those that are listening in at 619-356-4704. And not to break you out of the mode of what you were sharing, we next would like you to share your phase 1 and then phase 2 of your plan. And your phase 1 would be where you're at in Alabama. I saw a streaming video that you were sharing. I would like you to share with the listening audience about that. And then plan 2, and then we'll allow callers to call in the next 15 minutes or so, and before our show is complete. Okay, so go ahead with your phase 1 plan.
The phase 1 part of the plan is the American side of the plan. We're trying to find 1,500 active pioneers that can pay a monthly membership, which we call the Black Tax. And the purpose of the tax is to develop an economic stimulus to help us develop programs in our neighborhood, like I was just saying, painting the neighborhood, something we actually are trying to do in New Orleans. We're trying to start a cultural and development center. And all of these centers are a 3-tier system. They're an educational platform, so they have schools for children and adults to get cultural information, actual information, and skill trades, depending on who's helping. So if one of my teachers is a welder, then we're going to teach welding at 6 o'clock, and at 5 o'clock we'll teach, you know, the history of Black Wall Street. The second thing that they have is they're all going to be stores that produce farmer-style markets where you can get fresh food and produce that's non-GMO free, non-poisonous, not like the chips and the food you're going to get at Walmart, but they're going to be Black-owned products, services, and everything from clothes to food that we manufacture. Because it's really important that we don't buy Black but empower white. And what I mean by that is if you buy from a Black business owner, that's the start. But if that Black business owner at the end of the day has to drive to the white man's store to get what he's selling you, that doesn't help us in the long run. It just starts us in the right direction. And we want to start out in the right direction and help everybody in the long run. And that's pretty much phase 1. We're looking to develop Birmingham, Atlanta, and New Orleans with these types of programs so that we can literally go into the same neighborhoods that people see every day and say we've already started changing and developing a Black Wall Street style community in these 3 locations, and just focus on building those locations bigger and bigger. And that's phase 1.
Awesome. So, are you a nonprofit organization while you're here in American soil, or is your plan part of a nonprofit?
This is actually a big question. And I'm glad you asked that. I didn't think you would. People ask me this question a lot, and I'll try and make this happen in 5 minutes. There's a certain legality that you have to call yourself a nation as opposed to being a business, a movement, or an organization. To call yourself a nation is literally the legal right to say that you are a body of people that have a separate set of rights, rules, and regulations that aren't encumbersome of anything else. So I'll give you a light example. Religious movements are nations. So you can be a Jew and be a part of the Jewish nation, or a Christian and be a part of the Christian nation. Businesses, if they're large enough, can be, you know, the United Nations is technically not a group, but it's a business that regulates and mandates other people. So they're kind of like a business. Movements in themselves, like the Nation of Islam is a movement, and their religious ideology is Islamic, but they're still the Nation of Islam, so there are a movement. Races can be a nation. So if you are Puerto Rican, you're a part of the Puerto Rican nation. If you're Jamaican, you're a part of the Jamaican nation. And then countries can be nations. So all these different things can be nations, but that means that all of them in one uniform fashion can also be a nation. So we're not a corporation. We don't, and the reason why is if we become a corporation, whoever we incorporate under, legally we have to abide by, in the long run, their rules. They basically own us because they control the taxation on what we do as a group. We are a fluid movement, so it doesn't matter if you have a corporation or you have a business. We're not doing this for profit, we're doing this for change. So there's no reason for us to organize. We're literally trying to do this as a way of life that people can live by and commune their business and their life structure by doing things like this on a regular basis. So this becomes, everyday course of business. So I'm glad you asked that question.
All right. So what in your plan would be phase 2?
Phase 2 of our plan, which is something we're simultaneously working with phase 1, is we want to actually build the first actual Black Wall Street. We want to purchase 100 houses in New Orleans around a location where we're building one of the first stores and cultural centers. We already have the building. We're looking for investors and financiers. And as well as that, we're trying at the exact same time to purchase a plot of land in Africa in an inviting country where we can actually start producing and manufacturing the things that would typically we would have to buy from an Asian, Taiwanian, or European manufacturer. And what that does is that, like I said, it allows us to buy Black and empower Black rather than buy Black and empower white. And we're trying to work with multiple different countries. If we can work with anybody in Haiti, Jamaica, any of the predominantly Black cultures where people are impoverished, if we can create business structures in these countries, and as Americans, we buy from them directly, we're not dependent on the country buying it, we buy it. We can do that and literally create whole economies. In Haiti, for example, where people tend to think that Haiti is a poor nation, but they're actually mineral rich and have the hardest work ethic of almost any of the Black population we have. If you ever try to work next to a Haitian, it's real hard because they have a really high work ethic. So they're capable of doing things that we all want to do or can do, but they're raised that way so they can do tasks that may be hard for the traditional person, like farming, manufacturing, harvest tasks, and labor. But we can pay them a fair wage if we are just dedicated to buying that product or service directly from them. And then supplying whatever we want. Like if we have a store, and we have a chain or franchise of stores, well, if all our bananas specifically come from the plant in Haiti, well, that's a dedicated market that we create just with our Black dollar to support Haiti. We don't have to donate to the Red Cross or anything like that. We can literally tell people, go get a job at the plant or work in the community that we've established there. And then by doing things like that, we create an economic ecosystem that is self-funded. We don't need anybody's help. We don't have to ask the government for anything. We create our own jobs, our own economy, and our own community globally.
Wow, that's exciting. I have another question. How does the African government collaborate with your nation building program?
Now, that's the nation that we want to work with. So we don't care about America so much so as we're happy to work openly with any African government. I've tried and I've been trying to work with a couple of countries that want to start entertaining the idea of us coming, but we also kind of have a loophole where there's already existing African countries that have had the Garveyite principle or have open borders to any African American that wants to come back from the transatlantic slave trade. And we can kind of use that in to say, we're not going to Africa as a group or as a nation and saying, give us, or we're old. We're bringing money the same way the white man does, which is why they get an invitation. We want to buy. So we want to buy the land, and we then want to ask, can you make a special arrangement for us to not need a visa, or can we stay forever? Right now, you can go, for instance, to Ghana for like 150 years, and all you have to do is keep renewing your visa. And if we have to just keep renewing our visa, we're okay with that. We're trying to create business and a community at the same time. So that's the purpose of what we're trying to do right now. And we're entertaining anything that comes to the table from an African country or nation, and trying to address any of the common questions that people have.
I have another question. So what is your biggest challenge achieving phase 1?
Working with Black people.
Okay. So what is your typical day? What would be your typical day?
My typical day is people asking general questions. If it's not a business typical day, like my just general day of existing as a nation, is people asking questions that they haven't either done the research for, have a lack of education because we don't have really a foundation to say where do you get the basic information in nation building.
Okay.
And then our perception. Our perception, like for instance, when I say Africa, okay, I'm going to give you a good idea so everybody can see exactly what I'm talking about. Right now, we were talking about donating Judith a house because of all the work she's been helping us do. Even though she's not a member of the nation, it would be nice to give Judith a house. And she didn't even know this before this conversation. But let's say I went to Judith and I said, we're going to build you a house out of mud and grass. The first thing you start thinking of in your mind, even if you know better, you thought of a hut. You thought of, what? I want a hut. Now, I mean, I would be appreciative of it, even if it's a good person. But you're like, I don't want to live in a hut. Now, if I tell you that the traditional Mexican brick, or what they call an African brick, is literally mud and grass compressed and finited and added water. What they do is they put it into a press that's made out of wood that looks like a vice, and then make a brick. This brick is no different than a clay brick. The only difference is the grass holds the mud together, and when it dries, it's harder than a granite stone. So if you hit one with a rock or a hammer, it would break after the granite did. If you hit granite would break first. That brick would break way later. So now, if you have these bricks made out of mud and straw, you can mason a house. The same kind of brick house you see in Texas, Tennessee, is just having a mason go build it for you. But when you hear the first concept, your perception of an African brick is a mud hut. And it's just because of your knowledge. Like, you've never seen the Moroccan sand castle, or you've never seen them actually build mansions out of these bricks. So you don't know that it's possible. And then when you see them from an American or Europeanized perspective, even if I showed you one of those